Claude will build your workflow for you just like this, and it builds workflows in minutes instead of hours. But there's a very specific setup I call the VCS setup. If you have it, I promise you will avoid a lot of frustration. I have tried other ways and they were actually slower than building from scratch. But this way just makes sense. This video has 3 phases, and we will cover the VCS process in that exact order. First V, then C, and finally S. Each phase is absolutely necessary, and without the last phase, the S phase, the whole thing will be completely worthless. So make sure you stick around for all of it. Let's get to phase 1. Okay, so for the first phase, in the VCS process, the V stands for Visual Studio Code. So we're going to go to Visual Studio Code, and then we're going to download it, and it will show for your computer version here. And what this is going to do, it's going to allow us to have a very visual layout of our computer. It's going to make it so that it's a lot easier to find our folders, our files, those types of things that we're going to be working with, as opposed to working in the terminal, which is a little bit more kind of code heavy, or it's just a little less intuitive and not as visual. So you'll need to download Visual Studio Code onto your computer. And once you do that and get it up and running, then we can go on to the next step. Okay, so once it's downloaded, we are going to go and we're going to search for it here, Visual Studio Code. Okay, and that's going to open up a screen that looks like this. We're going to maximize this. This is Visual Studio Code. And the nice thing about this, like I said, is it makes it's much more visual in how it manages or how it navigates you through the folder and file system on your computer, which makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing. So we're going to go to File and we're going to do Open Folder. Now, I already created a folder for this project. If obviously you're not going to have a folder created on your computer for this yet, but go ahead and create a folder on your computer, probably your desktop or somewhere where it's easy to access. And then you're going to open that folder in Visual Studio Code, and that will set our baseline for what we're going to do today. So mine is going to be found here in YouTube demo. So we're going to open up this, and you'll see on the left side now we have this little folder that is open. Now there's nothing in that folder. We're going to add some things to it. Okay, so now that we have Visual Studio Code open and we have our folder open inside of Visual Studio Code, we're all done with the V phase, or phase 1 of this process. So now it's time to move on to phase 2, which is in the VCS is the C phase. Okay, now we're going to move on to phase 2 in the VCS process, which is the C, and this stands for Claude Code. And the beautiful thing about Visual Studio Code is that it has an add-on or an app that is native to Visual Studio Code through the Claude Code environment. So you're going to come over here to your applications and you are going to search for Claude Code, and it'll usually be the one that's right at the top. You click on it, and I already have it installed, but you would just need to install it here, and then you're gonna have to go through the login process and set up your account. And for Cloud Code, you're gonna need the Pro version, and but they make this Visual Studio Code makes this really simple. So once you have that, we're gonna go back to our file system. We're gonna exit out of this. Okay, now once you have Cloud Code downloaded into Visual Studio, you may or may not see a little icon up here that is the Claude logo. If you do, you can just click on that Claude logo. If you do not, you can press Command-Shift-P, and then you can search for Claude Code Focus Input, and you'll hit Enter, and then all of those icons will come back up here at the top. Now this is open, and we're ready to talk to Claude Code. Okay, now that we have Claude Code all downloaded, we have it open, we are ready to move on to the last phase of this process, which is the S phase. And this is the most important phase. If you don't have the stuff that we're going to add to this folder, your project will not be very successful. It will be more frustrating than anything else. And you're probably better off just building by scratch. And what we're going to do now is for the S phase, is we are going to add skills. We're going to add the NAN skills, which is basically a download of the documentation of NAN so that Claude Code can go and understand, have a knowledge base of NAN so that it builds things right, it builds things correctly and up to date according to the latest documentation. This is a very, very important step, and you have to be careful with how you complete this to make sure that it is done correctly and successfully. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to come over here to our browser and we are going to search NAN skills. There's going to be a website right here that looks like this, and then it will have a number of ways for you to download those Claude skills or those end-to-end skills for Claude. So we're going to go here. We're just going to copy this one, and we're going to come back here and we're going to say, can you download this to the current directory or folder? And I'll paste it in here and we'll hit enter. Now Cloud Code is very, very smart. It's going to know what to do with that. And then you're going to start to see some folder or some files show up over here along with some folders. So it's going to ask if we can do this, and we're going to allow it. And now you can see this popped up right here. So many files have been downloaded. Basically, this is the documentation for NAN that allows Claude to have full context, have full understanding of NAN and all the nodes and all of the settings inside of those nodes so that we can be building these workflows correctly and according to best practices and according to the way that these nodes need to be set up instead of just kind of stabbing in the dark and guessing. So now that we have these in here, we can see also if we open up our Finder, when we open up YouTube, then Claude Code has modified the folder and file system inside our computer. So now it's all right here. And we're just seeing a reflection of that in Visual Studio Code. So here's where the rubber meets the road. We're going to just type in here. In fact, I'm just going to speak it in here. We're going to tell Claude what we want it to build in N8N, and then it's going to output our JSON file here, or our NAN workflow in JSON format right here inside of this folder that we can then just copy and paste into our NAN instance. So let's just start talking to it. Can you please build an N8N workflow that will use the Appify API to scrape YouTube? And now we'll hit enter, and it's going to start thinking. Okay, so now it's asking me a bunch of questions to make sure that this workflow is built correctly. So I'm going to answer these questions and then we'll continue. So there, I answered all the questions. We're going to hit enter. And I also entered in the YouTube channels that I'm interested in following. Okay, now it's going to ask me some questions here that I have to respond to. So this will just go to work for a little while. And once it's done, it may have a few more questions for us, but once it's done, it's going to output the JSON file right here in that folder. So we'll be able to copy and paste it to our NAN instance, and we'll show that as soon as it's done. So here we go. Now that it's done, you can see that this file was created, this JSON file, which is our workflow that it created for us. And on top of that, it created a file, or it created instructions for us to follow that tells us all the things that we need to fill in. So this is an incredibly powerful process that will allow us to pretty much get to a working prototype in a very, very short amount of time. So now we're going to open this up. It's going to open up in a new tab, and you can see there it is. So we're going to now just copy this. We're going to go over here. We're going to go to Edit N. We're going to go to New Workflow, and then we're just going to paste this JSON in, and you can see it gave us a little note here that tells us the things that we need to do. And then look at this. Here is our workflow. Now, this might look pretty simple, right? But when you start looking into it, it did a lot of things. So look, it has all of our channel URLs here, and it has some other objects or some other variables that it's put in place here in this JSON or in this code node. And then it wrote our HTTP request to Appify, what the body is going to be in that request. So it did a lot of pretty complex things here. And then it's going to calculate the outlier score. So it wrote all this code that's going to calculate our outlier score for us. And it did all of this just by us speaking into the mic. Now, if you want the step-by-step instructions, including the links to all of the different websites that we had to use to put this whole process together, including a troubleshooting guide as well as common missteps or common questions, I created a PDF that will help get you through this whole process, almost guaranteed. So you can go to automationhackers.net, you can create a free account, and then you can go to the workflows repository, the workflow templates, and then you can download the template that is listed underneath the thumbnail that matches the thumbnail for this YouTube video, and you can get those step-by-step instructions as well as this workflow if you'd like it, and you can get it for free.